Okay, guys, here's your review over factoring. Okay. Solve the equation negative 10x to the power of 2 plus 25x equals 0. So first thing you need to know is how many answers you're trying to find. Okay, you're trying to find 2. Now after that, you're going to set up a little box there and decide if you're going to have to factor to find the 2 answers. And we know that. Do we have an x not to the second? Yes, we do. So we have to factor. So I need to do the set factor method here. So the equation's set because 0's there. Now how many terms are we trying to factor? Just 2. Okay. So GCF and then difference of perfect squares. So GCF, 3 things you got to look out for is a negative, x, and then the GCF out of the 2 coefficients. So negative is in front, we need negative. We also are going to need x because it's on both terms. We take the final one, okay, which is just x. It doesn't have a power. It means it's to the first power. So 10 and 25, well, here's 10, okay, is 25 there? Sure it is, okay, and here's 10 too, but I don't see 25 there, so the highest I ever see 10 here, it's with 25, it's to 5. So negative 5x is the greatest common factor, so negative 5x is pulled out, put in parentheses, and then I divide by negative 5x. The x's cancel on that final line, they don't cancel here. That's positive 2. And take that away and just take that down from a second power to just an x. 25 divided by negative 5 is negative 5, so minus 5. Now, is this right here a difference of perfect squares? Well, it's a difference, but 5's not a perfect square, so it's not a DOPS. So now the factoring's complete. I have all the factors I need to solve. I put equals 0, and that's F1, and that's F2. So either negative 2x could equal 0 or 2x minus 5 could equal 0. So I divide by negative 2 here and I get 0. And here I add 5 and then divide 5 by 2. It's 2.5. You're more than free to put 2.5 down. I'm going to put 5 over 2 down. Okay. But on a story problem, you'll want to put the decimal. Okay, number 2, we got x to the second power minus 11x plus 24 equals 0. So again, there are 2 answers. And to get the 2 answers, are we going to have to factor? Well, we also have an x that's not to the second power, so we're going to have to do the set and then factoring. Most of them you do have to factor. There's one where you don't. So we're set with the 0. So there are 3 terms. So I'd try to identify the greatest common factor, and then it's a trinomial, so I set up my trinomial t-chart. Okay, so again, the 3 things we look for is the negative, the x, and the GCF. So negative I don't need, x I don't need because it's 24, doesn't have it, and then 1's in the group, so if the GCF's just a plain old 1 without a negative, without an x, we eliminate that. So A, B, C. So I take positive 1 times positive 24. Well, that's positive 24. So we're going to add the factors because it's positive, and we're trying to get to 11, and 11's negative. So 1 and 24, nope, that adds to 25. 24 divided by 2 is 12. 24 divided by 3 is 8, and 8 plus 3 is 11. So the 11's negative, so to make negative 11 out of these, you got to put negative on 8, and since we have a positive and an add, the signs have to be the same. So they would both be negative. Now your A is 1x to the second. So I can forget about the 1 and just write x minus 3 times x minus 8. Okay, I don't need to break it down any further than that. So that's F1. And that's F2. So x minus 3 could equal 0, or x minus 8 could equal 0. So we plus 3. So that's 3. And then we plus 8. And that's 8. So 3 and 8 are the solutions to the equation. Okay, number 3. 2x to the second power minus 11x plus 15 equals 0. Now there's two solutions. You're going to have to factor. Yep, you got an x not to the second, so we got to do the set factor. So we're set. So how many terms am I trying to factor? I'm trying to factor 3. So I would make my greatest common factor, and then I would set that up from there from my t-table. So negative x in GCF. Negative, don't need it. X, I don't need it. 15 wouldn't have it. And then 2, 11, and 15. Well, here's the only row I see a 2, and 11 ain't here. And by the way, they're not all even. So GCF's 1. A, B, C. So positive 2 times positive 15 is 30 positive. So that's an add trying to get to 11, which is negative. 1 and 30, nope. 2 and 15, nope. 3 and 10, nope. Divide by 4 is a decimal. 5 and 6, yep, that'll work. So the 11 being negative, they got to make negative 11. Well, 6 would have to be negative, and I have up here now I have a positive, so the signs have to be the same. That does not mean just put positive on 5. To have the signs be the same, they both have to be negative. Okay, now your A here is not 1, it's 2x to the second. So because it's 2, we're going to need to make 2 sets of parentheses. So instead of x minus 5 and x minus 6, we're going to put 2x minus 5 and 2x minus 6. Now we know that's not the factors that multiply to this, because right away 2 times 2 is 4, and I have a 2. Well, that's why you divide by the GCF 2 at a time. 2 and 5 would stay the same, 2x minus 5. Now 2 and 6, obvious that's 2, so you can divide by 2, and that's 1x minus 3. Okay, and I didn't have a GCF, so this is my F1, this is the F2, and that equals 0. All I'm doing is rewriting this trinomial into its 2 factors. So 2 times x minus 5 equals 0, and 1 times x minus 3 could equal 0. So I add 5, that's 5. And you can divide 5 by 2. You can write 2.5 down, or you can just put 5 over 2. Then here we add 3 to both sides, that's 3. You don't need to divide by 1. Okay, this next problem's pretty quick. There's 2 answers, but do you have an x that's not to the second power? No, so you're not going to set and factor. You're going to get x squared by itself. So we have to undo the minus 49 by adding 49. And that's 49. And there's nothing really I would have to divide by, so x to the second equals 49. Then I square root. That's the opposite of a second power. So 49 is on that list, so I don't even need to use a calculator here. It's 7 and 7. So you could have 7 or negative 7 as your answers. Okay, number 5, we have 4x to the power of 2 plus 3 equals 7x. Again, 2 answers. Now, are you able to find an x that isn't to the second? Unfortunately, you are, so we have to set and factor. But we have a problem here in the issue that this isn't set, so we subtract 7x. And there's nowhere to subtract 7x other than here. But when we're writing our new trinomial, we have to write the 4x to the second first, the minus 7x, the plus 3, and that's equal to 0. So now I clearly see in plain sight the 3 terms. So GCF and my t-table. Okay, so negative x GCF. So we don't need the negative. We don't need x because of the 3. And the GCF, 4, 7, and 3. Okay, here's 4. I don't see 7. I don't see 3. Okay, so that'd be 1. And also you got 4 here, but no 7, no 3. Okay, so I take positive 4 times positive 3. That's 12 positive. So you're trying to add then to try to make it to negative 7. Well, let's just try to add them to 7 first. 1 and 12, nope. 2 and 6 is 8, but I need 7. 3 and 4, you bet. Okay, our 7's negative. That means our 4's negative. And when we have a positive up there, the signs have to be the same. So minus 3, minus 7. Now, what's your A? A is 4x to the second. Now, don't break that up into 2 and 2. You don't know that that's 2 and 2. It could be 1 and 4. So make 2 parentheses. And we go 4x minus 3 and 4x minus 4. Well, the GCF of 4 and 3 is 1, so that's going to remain the same. Now, the GCF out of two numbers that are the same is the number itself. So that's going to be 1x minus 1. See, that's 4x times 1x to get 4x squared. Equals 0, and I got my F1 and my F2. So 4x minus 3 could equal 0. 1x minus 1 could equal 0. So we add 3 to both sides. So 4 times x equals 3. Now you get a decimal. You can either write 0.75 or 3/4. Here I add 1. That's 1. Okay. Don't need to divide if it's a 1x. Okay, number 6. I have 2x to the power of 3 minus 10x to the power of 2 minus 28x equals 0. So we have 3 answers here on this problem. So do you have any x's not to the third power? Yeah, a couple of them. So you have to set and rewrite that expression in factored form. So you're set, and you're going to factor 3 terms this time. Okay? You don't group because there's only 3 terms. You group when there's 4 terms. Okay? The 3 terms should carry me to my 3 solutions that I desperately need in this problem. So negative x GCF. Negative in front? Nope. X on everything? Yes, we need x. 2, 10, and 28. Well, here's 2, here's 10, here's 28. So I can put a 2 with that x. So I factor out a 2x and then go up and divide everything by 2x. Now when you're dividing by x, the x's cancel on the last line. So that's 1. Now x to the third doesn't become just x, it would go to the second. Minus 5. And again, that's to the second, so that goes to an x, and then that's just minus 14. So now when I do the trinomial, ABC go here, and remember the a is 1 now, okay? So 1 times negative 14 is negative 14, so we're looking for a difference of negative 5. 1 and 14 don't do it. How about 2 and 7? Yep. So to make negative 5, our 7's negative. And we have a negative 14, so the signs have to be opposite. Now again, my a is 1x to the second, so I can just write that as x plus 2 and x minus 7. Now the 2x is brought down, okay, because I need 3 factors, and all these factors contain the x variable. So that's F1, F2, and F3. So 2x could equal 0. X plus 2 equals 0, x minus 7 equals 0. So we divide by 2 here, and that keeps us at 0. Then I subtract 2, that's negative 2. Plus 7, and that's 7. Okay, number 7. Negative 2x to the third minus 72x equals 0. So we have 3 solutions to the problem. Now, do you have any x's not to the second power? Indeed, right there. So again, you have to do the set factor. So you are set, indeed, and you're going to factor 2 terms. So I'm looking for the greatest common factor. And then I'm going to see if I can get this into a difference of perfect squares. So remember, GCF, negative x, and then the GCF out of the 2 numbers. Okay, now I do need a negative. I also need x because the final line has x. 2 and 72, well, my chart isn't big enough to find that because here's 2 and then I don't see the numbers that go past that. So what I do is I write the factors of 2, all 2 of them, 1 and 2. And then just take a calculator, see if 72 divides by 2. It's even, so it should. 36. So negative 2x. Okay, so factor him out and go divide. The x's on that final line cancel, and I get 1x1, and that goes to a second. And negative divided by, whoops, I screwed this up. That should not have been a plus 72. I'm going to switch, that should not have been a minus 72. I'm going to switch that to a plus 72. I screwed the problem up. So that's going to be positive divided by negative, so that makes me with a minus 36. I wrote an invalid equation because you can't do a dots unless we have a negative here, a minus here. Okay, now 36 is 6 times 6, and x the second is x times x, and 1 is 1 times 1, so that's 1x plus 6 times 1x minus 6. Now your negative 2x comes down here, and I can get my three answers, F1, F2, F3. So negative 2x could equal 0, 1x plus 6 could equal 0, 1x minus 6 could equal 0. So I'm going to divide by negative 2, and that's 0. Remember, don't add 2 there because it's negative 2 times x, so we divide. Subtract 6, I get negative 6. There's no point in dividing it by 1. And that's going to be 6, 2. So those are your three solutions. Now number 8. X to the third plus 7x to the second minus 9x minus 63 equals 0. Okay, three answers. Do we have any x's not to the third power? Yeah, 2 of them. So we have to make sure we're set and then factor. Okay, so we're set. That's good. But when I go to factor, I see there's 4 terms. Well, 4 terms, then I set up the grouping. I don't look for a GCF right away. So remember how grouping's set up. Get a plus between the parentheses, then a line outside your parentheses, and then make a line with a parentheses, kind of a longer line, because in that line goes a parentheses. And then after that, in this parentheses, I look for a difference of perfect squares. Okay, so I have 1x to the third plus 7x to the second, and then here I have the negative 9x minus 63. Okay, now you're doing the GCFs, but you're only looking at 2 of them at a time, so negative x and GCF. Okay, I don't need a negative here, but I need it here. X, I need x here, and I need the second power, not just x, because the final quotient has a second power. Now the GCF 1 and 7 is 1. You can put 1. You don't have to put 1. It's all going to work out in the end. And 9 and 63, well, here's 9 and 63 is there, okay? So that obviously the GCF's 9, okay? Okay, so 1x to the second is factored out, and negative 9 is factored out. So 1, now this will go down to just, that cancels, and this becomes just x, because it goes down 2 units. Plus 7, cancel the x's on the last line. And that's 1x. And that's plus 7. You're dividing a negative by a negative there. Now, in each parentheses, compare the parentheses, you see they're the same. So I put 1x plus 7 in that space on the outside. It's like I'm pulling it out. So now I can cancel it. And I have 1x to the second minus 9. Okay, now this 1x, the x here without the power, that can't be factored anymore. That's F1. Now this right here is a dots. It's a difference of perfect squares because you got 3, 3, x times x, and 1, 1. So 1x, 3, and 3. And now I have my 3 factors I now need to solve the problem. So 1x plus 7 equals 0. 1x plus 3 equals 0. 1x minus 3 equals 0. So that takes me to negative 7 there. Negative 3 here, and positive 3 here. Okay, number 9. A football is kicked from the ground with a velocity of 96 feet per second. After how many seconds does it land on the ground? So my 2 units are feet and seconds. X is seconds, Y is feet. So feet per second is 96. That should be obvious to all. Now, football, when it's kicked off a tee, I guess it's kicked off a tee, which is basically on the ground. It goes up, comes down. Now, I don't see any feet we start with, so 0 feet, and then you end at 0 feet. So I set up my quadratic equation from the parabola. So blank x to the second plus blank x plus blank equals y. So gravity's here, negative 16. The feet per second's here, that's 96. Now 0 is your initial height, so you will not need that term, and then 0 is the ending height. So there are 2 answers. Now you also have an x not to the second, so we have to do the set factor. We're already set, okay? But we have 2 terms, so I would see if I have a GCF. And then I would see if I have a difference of perfect squares. Or no, what am I made the wrong box. Dobbs. Again, you should just draw that little box with Dobbs. So negative x GCF. Well, we're going to need negative because 16 is negative. It always is when gravity is involved in pulling something back towards the ground. Okay, you also need x. Now, 16 and 96. Well, you don't know because 16, we didn't go to 16. So you have to tough that out and break 16 into all of its factors. 116, 28, 44. Again, if the smallest number is not in a row on that, you're going to have to tough it out. Take the smallest number, divide by 1, divide by 2. 3 is a decimal, and then 4 and 4. As soon as I get twin factors, I have all the factors. So now I take my calculator and see if I can divide 96 by 16. Can't be a decimal. Okay, it's not. 6. So I'm going to use 16. So negative 16x gets factored out, and then I go divide. Remember, when we're dividing by x, any kind of x, the x's cancel on the last line. So that's 1. That goes down to x, and that's negative 6. You can't keep that x on 6. The x's there cancel. Okay, adopts. Well, my x isn't to a power, so it can't be adopts. So my factoring is complete. This is my first factor, and this is my second. So negative 16x could equal 0, or we have the possibility that 1x minus 6 could equal 0. So I'm going to divide by negative 16, and that's 0. Then I add 6, and that's 6. So 0 and 6, but 6 seconds is the actual answer to the problem. You throw a ball into the air with an initial velocity of 38 feet per second. I'm just about done. The ball leaves your hand 5 feet above the ground. After how many seconds does the ball land on the ground? So you've got feet and seconds. So seconds is x, feet is y. So the feet per second is 38. Okay, now this is gravity, but I have to work the problem in a different way because it left your hand at 5 feet. It returns at 0 feet. So again, when you write the equation, you will not be able to delete the third space because you did not start at 0. So negative 16, 38. We started at 5, and then 0 feet can take the place of the y because feet is y. So there's 2 answers, and again, you also have this darn x not to the second, so we have to do the set and factor. 3 terms is what you'll be factoring. Okay, GCF. Again, we look for the negative, x, and the GCF itself. Okay, negative, nope. Okay, x, nope, not on everything. Okay, 5's a good smallest number to have. Okay, here's 5. Not seeing 38, so GCF here is going to be, and you do need the negative, sorry. I said you didn't, you do. First it was negative. So GCF's 1, but since it's negative 1, I'm going to factor it out. So that's positive 16x to the second. That's going to change that to minus 38x, and that's going to be minus 5. So A, B, C. So 16 times negative 5 is negative 80. So it's a minus trying to get to 38, which is negative. 1 and 80 obviously won't do it. 2 and 40, 40 minus 8, 2 is 38. So they have to make negative 38, so 40 is a negative, and the negative 80 means the signs are opposite. Now what's your A? Your A is 16x to the power of 2, okay? So it's A 16. So obviously, you break that down, and you don't go 4, 4, 8, 8, none of that stuff. First off, 8 times 8 isn't even 16. But you could also go other ways. Okay, 2 and 16, those can be divided by 2. So it becomes 8x plus 1. 16 and 40, remember, it's got to be the greatest, because you see 16, 40, you might be tempted to 4, but I've also got 16 here, so 8's the greatest common factor. So that's 2x minus 5. Now, we did pull out a negative 1, but since that doesn't contain an x with it, and I only need 2 answers, these are the only factors I care about. So 8x plus 1 could equal 0, or we have the 2x minus 5 equals 0. So minus 1, you get negative 1. Divide by 8, you can put negative 1/8, or, and I'm fine with fractions too. Plus 5, 2x equals 5. You can also divide 5 by 2. Now, obviously the positive is my higher, but before I write it, I want to divide 5 by 2 so the answer makes more sense. 2.5 seconds. 2.5 seconds. Okay, last problem. Find the area of the shaded region. So here's a shaded, by the way, put X right there. The area of the shaded region, well, it would be the length multiplied by its width. Now we have a length of 5, a width of x. So what's x? Well, now I write an equation for what I do have the area of, the white part, and it's equal to 60. Now remember, that's length times width. So I need to multiply the length and the width up here, because I don't want to put parentheses down here. Okay, so the length would be 1x plus 4. And our width would just be the 1x. So 1x times 1x and 4 times 1x. 1x second and 4x. Okay, so these would not be put together because that's a second, that's an x. So I can just go write 1x second plus 4x down here. Now the equation has 2 answers, but again, there's that darn x not to the second, so we have to set. This isn't set, though. We need to subtract the 60, just put it after the 4x, because there's no like term for it to go with on the other side of the equation. So we have 1x second plus 4x minus 60 equals 0. So that's 3 terms. So GCF and the table. If you execute it, you get the right answer. Oops, negative x GCF. We're not going to use a negative. We don't need x either, 60. 1's a GCF, so basically that's a moot point. So 1 multiplied by negative 60 is negative 60. So I would do a minus trying to get to 4 positive. Nope. 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 4 and 15. Nope. 60 has a lot of factors. 5 and 12 minus 5, 7. You can feel yourself getting closer to 4, though. 6 and 10, you bet. Now we've got to make positive 4 out of that, so plus and minus. Now your A, that's the last part I had A. It's 1x to the second, so I can just write x minus 6, x plus 10. No GCF to worry about, so F1, F2. So x minus 6 could equal 0, or x plus 10 could equal 0. Just write that outside the boxes and you just solve them. They're nice, easy equations. So 6 and negative 10. Now we want the highest answer, 6, and 5 times 6 is 30, okay? So 30 square feet is the area.